The data is showing that more and more and more people are suffering from burnout. Not just burnout, but absolutely being fried, not taking care of themselves, practicing very little self-care. And Amanda Ludwig, my guest on today's ThriveMore podcast, is going to talk about this. She is actually promoting the anti-hustle initiative. Now, that doesn't mean that she's saying you don't work hard, that you don't dedicate yourself to achieving the things you want to achieve, but you do it in a way that's healthy and sustainable. And you're going to hear that word again and again and again about a sustainable business, a sustainable team, a sustainable outcome. So at first, when I heard anti-hustle culture, I thought, okay, we're going to argue about some stuff on today's podcast because I'm all about hustle, but so is she, but in a healthy way. So if you or a friend or a family member is suffering from burnout, this is a great episode to listen to. Enjoy. I have the pleasure of speaking with Amanda Ludwig. And Amanda is a magnetic speaker with a captivating story of unwavering determination, resilience, and triumph. Despite being an award-winning entrepreneur and a multi-company founder, her defining moments occurred in a hospital room rather than a boardroom. At the peak of her career, Amanda confronted a pivotal moment when a doctor delivered the words, "Slow down or die." Following a 2-year medical leave, Amanda has emerged as a beacon of hope for high achievers, illustrating that success and genuine happiness can harmoniously coexist by utilizing the insights and methods that she has developed during her recovery. So with that, Amanda, welcome to the ThriveMore podcast.
Thank you so much. I am so thrilled to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be great. I want to just jump in here because some of my notes are around your these epiphanies you had and kind of the career you had before what you've built today, and then also what you kind of have paraphrased as the anti-hustle movement. So before we get to that, can you just tell us a little bit about your background before you got to that hospital room? What was going on, and what kind of life were you building before that hospital room?
Yeah. What a great question. And of course, there's so much to unpack there, but
Sure.
I think what's important in relation to this conversation, kind of how I landed in that hospital room. I am a multi-company founder. And so I had started multiple companies and transitioned them, sold them. I lost one in divorce, if I'm being perfectly honest, because he was my business partner. And that was the moment when I found myself without a spouse and without a job simultaneously, which for our audience that has gone through divorce, we know that's not easy. And we know through losing a job, particularly as an entrepreneur, if you lose a company, starting from scratch is a challenge. Anytime you're building, it's not easy. And so I was applying for jobs. I thought, well, I've done this, launched so many businesses. I'm a little tired. I'll just take the easy route and I'll just get a job, which for those of us with an entrepreneurial mindset, I think it might be actually a little bit harder to just get a job, because I was interviewing and I get these job offers and I feel like that just doesn't ignite a spark in me. I could be the CFO for a warehousing company, but it just didn't bring out that part of me that just really enjoys helping people by sharing any knowledge and information I have that can make their company or their life better. So I just kind of, I'd love to tell you I had this great 5-year plan mapped out, and this is what the company was going to be. But I literally just woke up one morning and was like, we're doing this. We're going to work today. This company doesn't exist, but it does today. And I just started working. I mean, I'd love to say there was a plan. There was no plan other than I need a job and I'm creating one starting today.
And what was the business? What were you doing?
Yeah. And so I had a background in accounting. I'd worked in multiple accounting firms, and I saw this huge need for business owners to not just have an accounting service, as in their tax prep or maybe their annual tax planning meeting, something in between the bookkeeping and the tax prep. So operational accounting is what always really I enjoyed. I loved helping the business owners to find areas where they could be growing, to manage the money, to cut expenses. I loved doing projections and setting goals and working alongside the business owners. And I did that as part of my role in these accounting firms. And so I said, and I had moved to an area that didn't have that. So I said, I can do that. I love this. I'm good at this. I'm going to do it. And it was amazing to see how it evolved, because I identified something there was a need for, which is important when you're starting a business. Sometimes we have really great ideas, but that we have to also identify there's a need. And so I started connecting with these businesses. And I'll be honest, I really didn't have to do much advertising. The word of mouth just spread. And next thing I knew, I had an office and a staff. And I mean, it just grew, and we were growing, often 50% year over year.
Wow.
And so, huge growth, rapid growth. And I loved the work. I loved helping the businesses and building those relationships. But what I didn't identify through that process was something that I think a lot of high achievers go through, which is we're mentally tough, right? We'll take it on. I can handle it. And we're driven by achievement. So the next thing, the business something would happen, it would grow, but it was always then the next thing and the next thing and the next layer and the bigger and the more. And yes, we were helping more people. So I didn't see any problem with it, but I wasn't reflecting internally. I was seeing the work we were doing externally, but I really wasn't seeing, those moments as if you're a small business owner, a key person leaves the company, and so you wear their hat and yours. You take on and you take on and you take on. And I had multiple businesses in the past. So I wasn't recognizing that I really started over time, working 7 days a week, picking up all the slack. I mean, I had a great assistant, I had a great team. But to maintain that level of growth that I had kind of gotten addicted to, I really wasn't seeing what I was doing to myself. So, my eating habits were going, exercise is going, relationships. In hindsight, I mean, when your friends call enough and you say you're too busy, they're just going to stop calling, right?
Quit calling. Yeah.
Yeah. And I didn't see it. I didn't see what I was missing. I didn't see the hobbies, things I used to enjoy that I had really let go. I love to hike. And I went a few years, I didn't hike one time. And honestly, I didn't even really notice. I just was so, consumed with everything that was happening. And so that is the backstory that really led to a lot of the concepts that I've developed now to help other people who were in that place. I still work with companies in an advisory capacity on the financials. I love helping people succeed in that way. I love to be the money man. That's great. But through my life, have recognized that helping a business owner make money is, I don't want to say insignificant. It is important, right? We have to make money and support our families. But it is not the only thing, right? So now that I can bring this other piece, like we're talking about thriving financially, but now we're also doing it in a way so as to protect the owner, their health, their life, their family. That to me is just sort of I in a way am so grateful that I've gone through the medical journey I have, because now I'm able to help people in an even more significant way.
Yeah. Amanda, how did you end up in this hospital room and a doctor said, slow down or die? What happened?
Yeah. So I was in my, mid to late 30s. So not really, in my opinion, old enough to be having conversations about you really need to slow down. But I started having these medical problems. And I'm happy to share a few of them because so many of them are relatable to so many people. So it was a daily headache, migraines, and appetite, nausea kind of things. Um, Later on, it progressed to dizziness and blackouts and some serious neurological things. Um, and so some things were starting to happen with my health regarding my heart. And that's what prompted, more examination. And I remember that doctor saying to me, to me in my 30s, you have the heart of a 65-year-old woman.
Hmm.
And she wasn't saying that I'm a loving grandmother personality type, right? She was saying, you are wearing your heart out. Like you can't, this is not sustainable.
And how would this manifest? Like if you're at your desk working, you're at home, like how would it manifest and you realized, man, something is wrong with me? Like what were the actual symptoms that said, okay, enough, we all get dizzy, we all get headache,
Right.
not all, but we can
Right.
get headaches.
Well, sure.
And
Yeah.
I start thinking, did I drink too much caffeine today? Did I, I
Right.
start trying to
Not enough
triage.
water. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. And those are all triggers for these
Sure.
things. For me, the first thing that really showed up was that I actually paid attention to, because keeping in mind, I had a lot of symptoms, but overachiever mindset, power through. I can do this. Just, that's, forget the migraine, just shake it off. And, crazy stuff. If I was having a day I was dizzy, I would just Uber to my clients. Like,
Yeah.
I knew not to drive, but I was still going. It didn't
Sure.
occur to me, maybe you should reschedule. Just drive, go. I just ignored so many things. But the things that really started to show up that I was like, might need to do something about this. It's difficult to admit, but the only things I paid attention to were the things that started to significantly impact my job performance. So I had significant physical pain, but I would just set my alarm 2 hours earlier. And I had a whole morning routine that allowed me to try to kind of calm the pain down before I had to leave for work. So it didn't occur to me, maybe something's wrong. And I was seeing doctors, but I just wasn't digging deep.
Sure.
But the things that really were okay, this isn't going to work out. I started having slurred speech. And my emails were so jumbled. I often, in preparing for a meeting, I would go back and read the email correspondence. So I'd make sure I was up to date with all of, with everything we were going to talk about, make sure the agenda was accurate. And I would read some of my prior emails, and they didn't even make sense to me. And I had written them.
Wow.
And no one said anything, I'm sure that there were just, sort of like, oh, that's a typo. I'm sure people know. Sure. No one ever said anything. Yeah. But the slurred speech days, it was a lot of difficulty remembering really common words. So it would be simple, oh, I think I left my laptop and I couldn't remember the word for car. And I'd be like, I'm just grabbing it. I'll be right back. I just kind of always played it off. Or my favorite joke was, oh, what's that word in English? Like I speak so many languages.
Sure,
I only speak English, but I'd always just play it off, and no one really said anything.
Amanda, was there, I've interviewed, dozens and dozens and dozens of high performing people. I've worked with hundreds of high performing people. And usually when it starts to go off the rails, we high performers will start to self-medicate in some form or fashion.
Yes.
Was that part of your journey as well?
Interestingly enough, I think I threw myself into research. That was my, drugs, alcohol. That for me, I was already feeling bad enough. And so I'm not much of a drinker. And so when I already had headaches, and I just thought, I don't need to add something, I don't need to add a hangover to how I'm feeling when I wake up in the morning. But I became very, up half the night.
Obsessed with
this
the
was
research.
my addiction.
Yeah.
Yeah. Up half of the night, reading medical journals, which having no medical background, I had to Google every third word, so it took me a really long time to read through an article or something. But I'll tell you, this is the part of the story that's really just sort of the bizarre icing on the cake. While I was dealing with burnout, so my body was so fatigued and, couldn't fight anything. The reality is I later got a quite significant medical diagnosis. And how did I get that diagnosis? When I started actually going to doctor's appointments and being like, look, I'm too tired to work. This isn't okay. They at one point told me I had mono. I slept for 3 months and still didn't get better. So I said, well, I got to go back to work. So you'd have to come up with something else,
Yeah.
And so the medical diagnosis came. Yes, I was in a place of burnout, which leaves us susceptible to a lot of illness. And we know there's so much research now about, cancer being tied to stress. And, there's just so much out there. But this medical diagnosis, I found it myself.
Wow.
And then I found a company that I could order the test. And then I found the kind of doctor, the specialist that treats that condition. And I showed up with the test and I said, I just thought maybe you'd want to take a look at this. And they ran all of the tests. And sure enough, I had found the right thing. But that was my obsession with, so that was my addiction during that time, was just being like, I'm too busy to be sick. It wasn't even, this is so, I want people to really understand what our mind can do to us when we're in this just chaos and working all the time. My drive to get better had nothing to do with avoiding death. It wasn't that I didn't want to die. It had nothing to do with I wanted to resume my wonderful life. The only thing I could think of was I can't work in this state. So I'm going to have to find out what's wrong so I can get back to work.
Yeah. So how did you
so
leave?
Sad.
Well, I don't, yes. And society and it's understandable, right? It's understandable. I guess that's what I hear.
Yeah.
I'm empathetic to that. So you hear this from the doctor. Normally people hear things from the doctor and they're like, okay, sure. Yep. Today I'm changing. And they go right back to doing what they're doing. So was it an epiphany and you're like, I need to make a right turn right now? Or did it take a little while longer for you to?
I wish I could say I left that appointment a changed woman.
Yeah.
It brought to my attention the seriousness of my condition, which then led me to pursue more, all this phase of researching and finding out what was actually contributing to all of this. But I can't say I made significant changes at that point. Mm-hmm. My mindset at that point, and it's so embarrassing to admit, but if it helps someone, I will tell you what I thought what was happening in my head when that doctor said that to me. I thought, well, you're the doctor, so it sounds like you need to do your job to figure out how I can get back to doing more.
You need to fix me. Yeah.
Yes. That was just sort of the okay, well, so my heart's not right. So what do we do about it? It wasn't this moment of, boy, I really have to slow down till we find out what was wrong. It was more of we need to now hurry up more to find out what's wrong because now we found out this is quite serious. Yeah. And so I wish I could say that was the turning point to my journey, but it was the turning point that allowed me to understand the seriousness, which then allowed, me to take it more seriously. I didn't slow down, but I took it more seriously. And that pursuit is what eventually completely transformed my life.
Tell us about that because we work in this world where hustle, achievement, hard work is championed, it's revered, it's edified. And you've become somewhat of an advocate for the anti-hustle movement. And so define that, if you can, define that for me, define that for the audience, the anti-hustle movement.
Yeah. So that, the drive and the hard work, it is something that we're taught from the time that we're children without even realizing it. And I don't fault parents for having the conversations of, well, you need to clean your room before you go play outside, or do your homework before you spend time with your friends. Those, of course, are wonderful parenting traits, but it does start to teach us that it's the work and then the fun. And then we join sports or do, different things in academics. And the more we achieve, the more attention we get, the more awards we win. And we start to learn we really love that. We really love to win the awards. We really love the recognition. And so then we do more and more and more. And, it's not something taught in business school to say, well, yes, work hard and do your best, but it's important that you take care of yourself. These are not conversations that I remember having, when I was studying at university. So, but I do remember winning a lot of awards at university, and I do remember the recognition and the achievement. And so that underlying bit, it is part of the culture. It's definitely prominent in American culture. And I don't ever want to knock the hustle, right? It takes a certain amount of drive to be an entrepreneur. There's a lot of ups and downs. And so since I primarily work with business owners or those wanting to be a business owner, it is a lot of ups and downs, and it's not for everyone, right? It is not just something that you take on without a little bit of preparation and a little bit of grit behind you. So I don't want to knock hustle culture from the standpoint of it is hard work and you've got to put in the work and you've got to do, you've got to have the effort behind it. The part when I talk about the anti-hustle movement is the part where we ignore the other elements that it takes to be successful. So my focus is really on sustainable success. Yes, I can help people be financially successful, but now I'm in this phase of really looking at what is sustainable success. I had success with my company, but it wasn't sustainable success. I mean, when I got sick, I had to sell my entire client list that I took years to build, to ensure that they had a home, a company to continue to assist them, to ensure my staff still had jobs, and took 2 years of medical leave. So I have proven what sustainable success does not look like. So that focus, when I talk about anti-hustle movement, it's not that I'm against hustle culture. It's not that I'm against what it takes to be successful, but rather I'm against this mindset that it's success at all costs.
Fair.
And I'm here to ensure other people don't give what I gave to success.
To learn that lesson, yeah. Hey everyone, as you know, I don't have any advertisements nor sponsorships on this podcast. My only ask of you, the listener, is that you share this podcast with someone that you know, a friend, a family member, a coworker, or a colleague who may benefit from this information, may benefit from today's guest, from the value that they're sharing with the audience, with you, the listener. When you share this podcast and our audience grows, it allows me to book more and more guests who have a great message, great nuggets of wisdom that you can benefit from, and again, your network can benefit from. So please, right now, push that share button, send it to somebody that you care about, and let's get back to the interview. When I read, if I'm very open and honest, because I agree with you. I want to first say that I agree with you that success should not be at all costs, because what do they say? It's a man with or a woman, who has their health, has 1,000 wishes. The man or woman who doesn't have their health, they have one wish, right? And a lot of us have been there, unfortunately, where it's just one wish. I just want to get healthy again. So certainly success can't be at the expense of everything else, because then you don't have success. You don't have anything. You don't even have your health.
Right.
But I just want to go one level deeper on this, just so I understand. So you're not, because I'm a big believer in delayed gratification. The marshmallow test they did back in the 60s or whatever, where, the longer the kids waited, they get more marshmallows, and they would, that they followed those kids, and the people that could delay gratification the longest would have the most success. And I've just seen in our society where it's instant gratification, dopamine hit, which is not the entrepreneurial life. The entrepreneurial life is, you got to work, then you got to work some more, then you got to work some more, then you got to keep working, and then you got to keep working, and maybe down the road you'll have some success. And that does take a toll on your mental health. You do have to be stronger mentally. I think you need to be physically stronger to be able to withhold some of the hours and whatnot. So if you could just, for me, I guess for the listeners, really unpack that a little bit, is because when you say anti-hustle culture, some people's minds are going to go to, oh, she's talking about don't work for it, not capitalism, that, which I don't think I'm hearing you say at all.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And so
No,
just,
not at all.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of go deeper in that just a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. So, again, it's back to that sustainable success model. It is yes, you have to put in the work, but let's find the ways to do the work, this smarter, not harder concept.
Sure.
And I think a big part of that, not to get into all of my entrepreneurial tips, but these are some things that I wrote about in my book for entrepreneurs, is that community is so important as an entrepreneur. So anything you're doing from a high achievement standpoint, community is important. And I'm not just talking about, networking so that you can obtain more clients, but rather having those mentors, having those coaches, having those things. So to me, that's a way of working smarter, not harder, because you can learn these, you can avoid the mistakes. You can rapidly increase your progress by having this community and having that support. And so there are ways to hustle without sacrificing your well-being. And so that is really, and I feel like the word balance is just so sort of overused, but it is a way of saying, yes, I want to achieve these goals. Yes, it's going to be hard work. I'm willing to put in the work. But I also understand that putting in work for anything I want to achieve from a business standpoint also means putting in work on myself.
Yep.
And that's where it's actually, I hate to say it's more work, because if we're burnt out, we don't want to hear about more work.
Sure.
But it's the kind of work that actually causes us to be more efficient, to work faster, to be more productive, so that in our working time, we are very productive and we make room for the downtime that we have to have. And I'm obsessed with the science behind, this concept of maybe, I don't have time to work out. That's a great example, because that's one, of course, it's so common, right? And so the studies and such that show that maybe this extra hour of investing in physical movement can increase productivity by X%. And then we look at the number of hours in a day and say, oh, actually, I could work less hours, still fit in the workout, and still have used the same amount of hours in a day. That's the stuff that I'm talking about. When I'm talking about anti-hustle, it's not about, I'm a hustler. I'm just, that's who I am.
Yep.
But I'm doing it in a different way. And it's so much better. And so that's, I think, what people really need to understand.
If I'm hearing you correctly, Amanda, what you're saying is work, achieve, live up to your potential, and practice self-care. That's mental health. That's physical health. That's creating some space to just be, because that's when your mind can be the most creative.
Yes.
So it's, I'm not hearing, shun the responsibilities, but make sure that you schedule in. And I think we both would agree, scheduling in those activities versus I'll make time. I'll find, I'll get to the gym tonight. No, you won't. Not if you didn't pack your stuff. Not if it's not in your car. Not if it's not on your calendar.
Yes. I literally just recently, I teach this quarterly, and I just had one. I teach a masterclass called Scheduling Your Success, and it's about time blocking and productivity. And one of the first things I have everyone plug in is, okay, put the things that that you've been meaning to do and haven't gotten to, put those things in first. And then we're going to build backwards. And it's amazing when people start putting it on their calendar and seeing it there and seeing they have reserved the time for it. It is possible. That visualization technique has really been amazing for a lot of people, because when if you say you want to do it and it's on your calendar, it's a lot easier to make it happen when you've actually blocked the time for it.
Yeah. And I was going to ask, just do you have any One thing I share with people is turn off all your notifications, right? That's just this complete time suck, and it distracts you. And there's no such thing as multitasking. We can only task switch. And
Yes.
so, that's one. But
Yes.
do you have a couple other hacks, if you will, or just tips that you could share that, if
Yeah.
somebody were starting to just reclaim, the first couple of steps to reclaim their, their health, their mental health, their independence from this success at all costs mentality, what's one or two things that you would recommend?
Yeah. So some easy ones, and I know I was neglecting this, is hydration.
Mm,
So uh, drinking water sounds so simple, so basic, but you know, more than half of our society remains in a dehydrated state most of the
yep.
time. So it can't be, but so simple, right? And
Yeah.
so again, I love the data, I love the science, and I wish I had the numbers right in front of me that I could share with you. But it's a huge percentage that our productivity decreases when we
I
are
think,
dehydrated.
and I don't know what the percent of decrease is. It's double digits. It's significant, but it decreases
Yes.
at double digits if we're just 3% dehydrated.
Yes.
That I do
So
know.
not
It's
like
three.
dehydrated. Yeah. Not
Yeah, not in the
dehydrated
desert.
like we're even feeling thirsty yet,
Exactly.
or we have a headache because we haven't drank. I mean, we might not even be feeling it at that point, especially if we're used to being in a slightly dehydrated state. So
Yep.
that to me, like that's an easy one. And an easy way, a doctor actually shared this with me. What's really cool about having a long medical journey is I have met some of the best doctors in the country. And so I just pick up all the tips, right? Even if it's not
Yeah.
specific to my medical condition, I'm just like, I just want to, I'm a sponge. And a doctor actually told me, get a water bottle that you like. And I thought, well, everybody's got a bunch of water bottles. Like the way it feels in your hand and it fits in your cup holder in your car. And I never really invested in thinking about, do I like my water bottle? But
Yeah.
I found one that I really like and I find myself using it more. So that was such a simple tip. But, if it doesn't fit in the cup holder in your car, you're likely not to take it with you when you leave the
I use it.
house. And then you go all day without drinking your
Yeah.
water. I mean, simple things. I love the
Yeah.
simple things. When you are in a burnt out state or just overcommitted, you don't need to add hard to your life right now, but you can add water.
Yeah.
Another one, when I do this, like in a corporate workshop, I just ask people to eat one healthy meal a day, right? Because we're skipping lunch, we're door dashing for dinner. Start with just one healthy, just like this is my healthy meal. Start there. And what happens is, of course, you build the desire for more, but don't overwhelm yourself. Start with one healthy meal a day. We know sleep is important. So, a really easy sleep tip I give. I won't say her name, but it's spelled Alexa. But if I say it, all kinds of things will start happening around me. So, but whatever system you have in your
Yeah.
home, a lot of people have a system. Mine, starts dimming the lights at a specific time, so I know to start preparing myself for sleep. So I
Mhm.
have a whole sleep countdown, which there's a lot of books about, having a
cool.
sleep countdown that people
Yeah.
can look up. So instead of remembering, I might be busy or in the middle of something, the lights start to go down, and they go down sort of in a sequence,
Yeah.
so that I start to feel like, oh, it's time for bed. So these are simple things. These are low or no cost things that we can all be doing. So those are, just three simple tips, but really the core of all of these things, and us even wanting to do them, because it's difficult to start something if you don't see the importance of it and you don't have the desire to do it. Like you're like, yeah, I should drink water. But I think the real core of it, when I talk about this, like if I'm speaking about this, I ask everyone to take a moment and dig deep about why they feel so driven to achieve. And when we start, and I have some exercises to walk people through, and when we start recognizing our achievement drive is sometimes tied to an insecurity, we feel like we have to do more. A great example, women in the workplace, we may feel like we have to do more than our male counterparts because we're maybe a woman in a male dominated industry, or, there's all of these reasons that we feel like we have to do more, be more. We can't sit down. We can't relax because there's more, and I must get it done. And when we start digging deep to find out, is this coming from a healthy place? I'm a driven person and I'm excited about it. Or is it coming from a place of insecurity? Is it coming from a need for approval? Is it coming from an addiction to achievement? That was me. I could say I was addicted to achievement. It was just the next thing, the next thing. Like that was my drive. And my addiction to achievement was greater than my desire for life because I chose achievement over taking care of my own self. That's how strong my achievement addiction was. And so when we start unpacking those underlying things and we start identifying why we sacrifice ourselves for achievement. Of course, I'm a big fan of achievement. I don't want there be any misconception. But when we start recognizing that we are sacrificing ourselves for that achievement or that success, when we unpack that and understand that what I call in my program achiever drive, and we all have different drive, and so I'm a achiever drive. That then identifying that helps to make the journey toward the self-care so much easier because we start to see the value in taking care of ourselves. If we don't see value in it, we're not going to really truly invest in it. And if the thing we're not seeing value in is ourselves, then it's hard to start the path of all the healthy eating and all of the things and mindfulness, all the things that we've heard are good until we can recognize how important we are. We don't have the drive, like the achiever drive. We don't have the drive to go out and do those things. So that's really a part of what I help people with is understanding their achiever drive, if that's something that they're working on. And then it unlocks so many other things when we get the foundation.
I would imagine, just two thoughts here. One, I would imagine that the fear of, and again, I've interviewed enough people and worked with enough people and done enough therapy and introspection myself to know that the fear of failure is so much more of a driver for so many of us than the actual pursuit of achievement.
Yes.
But we go so far to over deliver and say, like, failure's not even in the same zip code as us, that, we achieve amazing things, but it's funny. We weren't really running towards this achievement. We were running away from potential failure, which is a hell of a motivator.
Yes.
Like we're hardwired that way. Like so many achievers are hardwired.
Yes.
That way.
Yes. And so that is a fear drive, right? So we have achiever drive, we have fear drive. And one is not necessarily stronger than another. We all have, of course there are healthy motivators as well. But fear drive is a real thing. And boy, fear drive will wake you up at 4:00 in the morning so you can go out there and do. I mean, fear drive we can push ourselves physically so much because fear drive actually produces a lot of adrenaline just in daily life. It's so fascinating how the mind and body work together like that.
And I, here's a guy who I own a franchise of. I'm the franchisor for 60 locations of Rockbox Fitness, and then we also have another brand called Beamlight Sauna, which is an infrared sauna, like private infrared sauna rooms. All really self-care, fitness self-care or recovery self-care. But it's funny. I will work so I travel and I get busy, and fitness can be one of the things that will be sacrificed. And then I'll get back into my routine, and I will literally go home after working out, and I'll walk in the door and I'll look at my wife and I'll just say, I'm a happier human being when I work out. Like flat out, I'm a happier man when I exercise. Like I know that about myself. I've learned that it's no longer an option. Like I will have to exercise for the rest of my life if I want to maintain the level of happiness that I'm pursuing. And that's just wired in my body somewhere, that serotonin release, whatever it is. I walk in the house and I'm like, I feel great. And then when I don't, but I guess I say that, I share that with you because you've identified these things and you help people identify these things that help them stay grounded and find that balance. And again, I'm with you. Like balance. Some days you're going to have to work 12 hours a day, but then, maybe a Saturday you don't do anything.
Absolutely.
You recover, right? Balance is kind of tough.
Right.
It's like go all in where you need to go all in,
Right.
and then go all in on your family,
Yes.
go all in on your self-care.
Mhm.
But I
Yeah.
guess my point, my long-winded point here is just I love that you shared that, because I hope the listeners will find what their thing is. Like, what is that thing that if you don't do it, you're not as happy of a person? And when you can identify that, then you will start making it a priority, because you'll know, if I don't do it, I'm just not happy. And we all are seeking happiness, right? We're all seeking
Right.
happiness. So it
Right.
makes it easier. You have a book coming out. Actually, I think by the time this podcast launches, it'll be out. Can you speak to your book just a little bit, and what you hope
Yeah.
it can help people do?
Yeah, absolutely. So the book is called The Panda Principles. Now, all of my friends call me Panda. Only recently have I actually introduced myself as Panda in the business world, because I was still trying to sound like a grown up and tell people my
Sure.
name is Amanda, but it's Panda. Like, let's just be real. Everybody calls me Panda. So the book is called The Panda Principles, and not so much because I think I'm such a celebrity that I needed to name the book after me, but rather the concept of the book is that I have collected business principles from having worked with hundreds of entrepreneurs and been a business owner myself. And these are a lot of them are the things that we're not talking about. For example, the ups and downs of being an entrepreneur. And, there's a lot of financial principles in there. I mean, it is a collection of things that I have seen and had conversations with business owners about that helped their businesses to be successful. I've also seen businesses not be successful, and so there's some warnings in there. But it's really a collection of business principles. And the prompt, or the reason it's called the Panda Principles, is because in the book is a lot of encouraging entrepreneurs. I'm going to share a business principle. I'm going to share a story or an example. Some of them are funny, some of them are quite serious. And then I'm going to ask the business owner, the reader, or someone who's wanting to start a business, I'm going to ask them to develop their own principle.
Hmm.
It may be my principle. It may be a spin-off of my principle. It may be the complete opposite. And I'll be thrilled to hear the feedback of when people have made their own principles. But what it's doing is allowing businesses to make decisions about things and shape the values and the core principles and how they want to do business by thinking about things that maybe they haven't yet experienced in their business, or maybe it's a problem within their business that they hadn't really seen before. And these principles are going to help them to identify those things. And then there's a lot of prompting for developing your own set of principles and communicating those principles with your customers, with your staff, having that be the core of how your business operates. So
Yeah.
lots of functional tips, as well as, some values and principles about how do you want to manage yourself? How do you want your customers to feel when they interact with you? So it's just a really, hopefully value-packed, short book that's just bullet of these principle after principle after principle with some action items for the reader.
That sounds great. Congrats on the
Yeah.
launch of
And
that.
now,
Yeah.
and of course, I've interjected a lot of taking care of the business owner
Yes.
as, their well-being as a principle for running a successful business. So it is not without some avoiding burnout type of topics.
Love it. That's great. That's great. Obviously, you've written a book, and the listeners of this show know I'm an avid reader, and I just love to consume business books, self-help books, biographies. I love. Is there a book that you've recently read, or even 20 years ago, that had a real profound impact on you? And maybe you go back to it every so often.
Absolutely.
Could
Yes.
you write? What is that?
I could, except for Roger, I'm going to have to pull it up because I do not want to get the title wrong, because I
Sure.
want everyone to check out this book.
Okay.
And so I want to do the author a proper service and pull it up in my Audible library and make sure I have the title exactly on. Yes.
And we'll put
Rise
it in the
and
show
Shine.
notes there. Yeah, we'll put it in the show notes too.
Rise and Shine by Leanne Spencer.
Okay.
was a life-changing book for me. Through my health journey, that was really the one where I started to make more connections between not just my medical diagnosis, but also recognizing that there are so many people having these same symptoms, and it's directly tied to their stress level and their burnout.
Mm.
So that was, to me, this mind body connection, and not looking at everything just strictly from a medical diagnosis standpoint,
Yeah.
but actually acknowledging that our mental health plays a really huge role in what's happening to us physically. And then, of course, the body keeps the score. That's a very popular one. And that one then was the follow-up book to reading for me from the first one, because it really opened my eyes to a lot of things.
Our bodies are pretty darn perfect, and they will let us know when something's askew. We don't listen to it often, but
yes.
It lets us know. It lets us know.
Our bodies are perfect. We can be a little imperfect in the listening.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah. A couple last questions, and these last couple are a little bit different, but it's always interesting to me, and I hope the listeners, where the guest will share, if we were to fast forward to the end of your life, Amanda, we're at the very end of your life, and Panda's Panda Principles is a bestseller, and everything's done, and you're. But we're at the end of your life. So we're at your funeral, and a loved one is reading your eulogy. But the constraint is that person could only choose 3 descriptors, 3 different words to describe the life that you led. What 3 words do you hope that they choose to describe your life, Amanda?
Wow. What a great question. And it's bringing to mind, as embarrassing I can say this is to admit, I actually had this conversation with my family before my life changed. I remember sitting on the sofa with my laptop, because I was working, even though I was with my family. I traveled to see them, but I was still working.
Of course.
And somehow we got into this conversation, and I said, when I die, you all better not put any of that mushy stuff on my tombstone about, loving sister and daughter. Like, you all better not do that to me. I want my tombstone to say she was driven and hardworking. In hindsight, it's pretty entertaining, but that's where it was mentally. I don't want all that mushy stuff. I want people to know that I was driven and I was hardworking. That's what I want people to know. And so now your question, thinking ahead to the future, it's like, that would never be the answer, right? Those descriptors now, I would never want them to be driven and hardworking, although I think those are wonderful traits to have. I think the only thing I could say that I would want people to say about me when I'm gone is that she helped a lot of people. I know those aren't descriptors. I'm sorry.
Fine.
My vocabulary may not be advanced enough to have those 3 descriptors, but she helped a lot of people, I think, is what I'm like getting emotional just thinking about it. I think that's what I would want people to say, that I used my life in the best way possible to help others.
Yeah.
Not at the sacrifice of myself. That's the part we're working on, but that I took care of myself well enough to be able to help others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Thank you.
And thank you. I didn't realize that's something that would make me so emotional to think about, but boy, what an honor that would be for people to say that.
And that's, I asked that question. I've shared this before. I asked that question because it's been asked of me. And I've actually done this exercise where I had to write out my eulogy. And you talk about bringing things into crystal clear focus of what matters in life. It's not he amassed this much wealth or he had this, right? It's about the people you impacted. That's when it came down to it. I realized that's what I want to do. I want to leave a legacy of a ripple effect that helps other people and helps them achieve their goals. But it's funny how we can get wrapped up in social media and just a bunch of BS. But when you have to write what you want people to say about you at your funeral, you get real clear real fast. Yeah.
I think I'm going to need to be doing that exercise. I think might be going on to the list. Wow,
It's
that's
wonderful.
powerful.
Yeah, it's one. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not mine. I got that from somewhere else, but it's a wonderful
Yeah.
practice. And then revisit that every so often, right? Of course. So if last question before we find out where people can follow you and find you, if you had a magic wand, so you've been through the life that you've been through, and that you're very open and generous in sharing. If you had a magic wand, and I were to give you the magic wand today, and you could wave it tonight, and we wake up tomorrow morning, and the world is different according to Amanda in one way, like you can make one massive change, whatever change it is you want, but it's only one, but you can make one change to the world and the way the world operates, is, functions, whatever. And you wave that magic wand tonight. When we wake up in the morning, how is the world different according to Amanda?
Very, very powerful question. I feel put on the spot. You don't know this, but I was a pageant girl in my younger years, so the answer to that question would always be world peace.
Well,
but
exactly.
I have just world peace. But something I'm really seeing as I'm working with people and really studying people and in my own life, I think the wand, and this is going to sound totally bizarre with everything we've talked about, but I think the wand that I would wave would be a wand of confidence, because I've identified so much of our this damage we do to ourselves and our health is often a lack of belief in ourselves or self-love or, whatever words that you want to use. But I've just seen such a lack of confidence. Even I've worked with some very successful people, multi-millionaire successful companies, and even some of those doubt demons that plague, even some of the most successful people, there is this element of tying my financial background, this topic of preventing burnout. I see this thread of a lack of self-belief, a lack of self-confidence, a lack of self-love. And so I think that if we waved that magic wand of confidence, that so many things would change. So much of people would stop hurting other people, because so often hurt people, right?
Hurt people.
And so
yep.
So that healing and that belief in ourselves and the confidence, I think crime would decrease. There's just the impact. Certainly in the medical profession, if we're having more self-love and self-confidence, we're taking better care of ourselves. So then we're talking about fighting disease. Like, I'm not saying confidence is the cure to cancer, but I can make some connections between this idea of confidence, self-love, self-care to so many things, so many of the sad things that we see in the world. Like I said, crime and medical conditions. Somehow in my world, I can make a connection between so many different things just about that topic. So I've never really thought about that question before, but that was the first thing that came to mind. Was I'd wave that confidence wand and see what would happen in the world.
It's funny. I have guests ask me, like, is that right? I'm like, there's no right answer. It's your answer, right? Yeah. So whatever. Yeah.
And if I had time to think about it, maybe I would have an answer that would be,
No, first thing.
But honestly, that just the second you said it, I said confidence.
That's the answer.
Self-love. Yeah. And I think it is. I think it's the answer.
Yeah.
And world peace.
Yeah, and world peace. Of course.
And world peace.
So where can people find you, follow you, connect with you if they so choose?
Yeah. So I interact with a lot of people on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I do my best to share a lot of valuable resources, absolutely free, on LinkedIn. So that's a great place to find me.
When they look for Amanda Ludwig on LinkedIn, I'm sure there's going to be several. How will they find you specifically?
Yes, that is a great question. They will find me because right below my name, there is a panda icon. So
Perfect.
I am imagining I'm the only Amanda Ludwig that is a panda icon. So look for the
Perfect.
panda. That one's me.
Awesome.
That's a great question. And then, and also, if you would like info on the book, we do a lot of giveaways, and there's a workbook coming up. So a workbook to complement the book, to even go through deeper into the exercises. So a great way to get that. I'm sure there'll be things in the show notes, but if you're listening, you've got your phone, if you text the word podcast to 55444, just the word podcast, just capital, lowercase, it doesn't matter, podcast to 55444, then we'll shoot you an email and give you the option of, do you want to know, you want information about the book? Do you want to know about workshops coming up? I do a lot of free master classes, and also corporate workshops. So I'm going into companies and transforming them by creating some of this burnout prevention, and they're working together with us as a team. So you'll have the option to choose what things you want information on, and my team will be happy to get that over to you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you. Well, I am very grateful for you coming on and just openly sharing your journey and really going deeper on some of these things to talk about it. That's going to help people. And I certainly enjoyed the conversation as well. So thank you for coming on. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much. This has really been a lot of fun, and I really appreciate you allowing me to share this, what I believe is such an important message with your audience, and being generous with your audience in that way. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for tuning in to the ThriveMore podcast. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for any of the resources that we mentioned during the podcast. And if you haven't already, be sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications so you have access to the latest and the greatest. You can connect with me on any of the socials at Real Roger Martin. And be sure to check out our website, ThriveMoreBrands.com. There you'll find information on the brands we support and information on franchising. Thanks again for tuning in.